Hello, and welcome to Art with Miss Michelle. Today we're going to learn about an artist named Jacob Lawrence. Jacob Lawrence was born in 1917 in New Jersey, where his parents had migrated from the southern U.S. Unfortunately, when he was a small child, his parents divorced, and his mom could not take care of him and his two younger siblings, and she put them in foster care in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Luckily, by the time he was 13, she got them back, and they went to live with her in Harlem, New York. And he was introduced to art in after-school art classes. And one thing that bothered him was that when he was in school, they were never taught about Black history. So he became very interested in this, and he attended lots of art classes at the Harlem Art Workshop, and one of his teachers got him a scholarship to the American Artist School. He had a lot of support from different Black professors and teachers, particularly Charles Alston, and he studied the history and the struggle of Black people in America. And his art, what he did with his art was he was a storyteller, and he would tell the stories of people and their struggles. Instead of creating one painting about something, he would create a series of paintings. So his first series was 41 paintings, and they were about a Haitian general named Toussaint Louverture, who led a revolution of slaves that eventually gained their independence. So his favored method of art was tempera painting, and he would mix his own colors. After his first series, he did a series about Harriet Tubman's life, and another series about Frederick Douglass, who were both abolitionists and were involved in helping to free slaves. So instead of doing like one portrait of Harriet Tubman, he did a whole series telling about her story. And this was a really important form of art, and it really helped to maintain some of this history that might otherwise be lost in generations. So a lot of his paintings were from stories he was told, and also from history that he studied on his own. In 1941, he married another painter named Gwendolyn Knight, and they had very similar interests, and she would help him with some of his work as well as doing her own paintings. Probably his biggest series was the Migration series, and it is 60 paintings on wood panels, and it showed the migrations of hundreds of thousands of Black people from the rural South to the urban North. So it was very racist in the South. There was a lot of hardship. The economy was not great. There wasn't a lot of money or jobs. A lot of their revenue came from farming, and there was a pest that would destroy farmlands called the boll weevil. So there was lots of things that made life in the South very hard. So a lot of people decided to move north, and it was a little bit better in the north, but it was still pretty hard. So they just had different struggles. They lived in much closer quarters, like crowded cities, instead of large farms on lots of land. So it was easier for them to get sick. And it was a little bit less racist, but they still did have, unfortunately, racism. And they could find some jobs, but it was very industrial and factory type of work that was maybe a little bit different. But this was a story that told about not only his parents' lives, but people they knew and people during those times in America. So it was very important that he tell this story. This work was very widely accepted and celebrated, and it was exhibited at the Downtown Gallery in Greenwich Village, New York. And he was actually the first Black artist to be represented in a New York art gallery. So this brought him a lot of national recognition. And the series, the 60 painting series, was eventually split into two groups. One was purchased by the Smithsonian Museum, and the other was purchased by the Museum of Modern Art in New York. So one museum got the odd-numbered panels, and one museum got the even-numbered panels. And this was also the first time the Museum of Modern Art purchased art from a Black artist. Another really interesting thing about the Migration series is that he took these 60 paintings, and they were probably about 1.5 feet by a foot, so pretty large. And he mixed his own paint, so he would make one color, and he would lay all 60 paintings out, and he would paint each painting, whatever, like, say, all the red spots on all 60 paintings, so they would all have the same color red on every painting. And then he would do the same thing with green and each color that he used. So he painted them all at once instead of one at a time. He served in the Coast Guard during World War II, and during this time he made 48 paintings, and sadly they were all lost. So all of his work from that time is gone. But who knows, maybe someone will find it one day. That would be extremely exciting. Some of you might remember a couple of years ago we were able to go to the Seattle Art Museum and see the entire Migration series, which is actually the first time it was reunited from the two museums and put all back together. And right now at the Seattle Art Museum, he has an exhibit called The American Struggle that he created between 1954 and 1956. And it is 30 panels. It was originally going to be 60, but he ended up completing 30, which is still a lot. And they're actually together now for the first time since 1958. So this series shows the role that women and Black people played in the founding of our nation. So it shows some scenes from the Revolutionary War, and includes some important stories that might have been overlooked and excluded from history books, which often tell mostly about the role that a lot of white people played. You hear a lot about George Washington and other important white Americans, but there were a lot of other important people that might have been overlooked. So he said the series was intended to depict the struggles of a people to create a nation and their attempt to build a democracy. So it's 30 paintings, and most have a quote from historical texts with them. So during the 1970s, Jacob Lawrence actually came to the University of Washington in 1970 as a visiting artist, and in 1971 he started teaching as a professor, where he taught at UW until 1986. And after moving to Washington, he did a series of 5 paintings that showed the westward journey of pioneer George Washington Bush. And that series is in a collection at the Washington History Museum in Tacoma. He was a very important artist, He really helped keep a lot of important history alive through his artwork. Jacob Lawrence also did some large artwork during his life, the last of which was a mural in a New York subway station. And he lived to be 82 years old. He passed away from lung cancer in the year 2000, and he kept painting up until a couple weeks before his death. His wife lived to be 91 years old, and she passed away in 2005. So for our art project today, we are going to do a Jacob Lawrence style picture. If you want to do more than one to tell your story, you can. So if you would like to paint it, you can. If you don't have paint or want to do something a little bit less messy, you can color it with crayons or pencils or pastels. So you can choose what material you want to use and think about something that you want to depict. Okay, so for your picture, you can decide if you want to do one picture or if you want to fold your paper or use multiple papers to show different parts of your story. So if you want to depict some kind of struggle, you can. It doesn't have to be a struggle. It could just be something important that's important to you or your life, or it doesn't have to be your own life. It can be something you want to tell a story about and have people aware of and remember. So I would say right now we're actually in probably one of the biggest struggles in any of our lives, the pandemic. So I might just draw something to depict that. Now, a lot of his pictures, I think they tell a very powerful story. They're not necessarily super detailed. Some of them are. Some of them show more of just the idea of the figures, and he uses different shapes and scenes to give a strong feeling without necessarily adding a ton of detail. I think he does a very good job of this. So if you want to make yours detailed, you can, but it doesn't have to be. I'm just going to sketch mine out in pencil, and then I'll use my crayons to color it in. And one thing you might want to consider doing is using a limited color palette. Okay, so here is my Jacob Lawrence inspired picture. So this could be one of many that tells a story about this challenging time we're facing right now during the COVID pandemic. So I'm going to be honest, when I started drawing this, I wasn't very happy with it. But now that it's finished, I think it does tell a story. It shows a line of people waiting in a parking lot to get tested in a tent. So, like, this guy doesn't have any feet. The people look a little weird, but this is not a portrait, it's a story. And I think this picture does a good job of telling at least part of the story. So, thanks for watching my video. I hope you like this project, and happy storytelling.